Thank you. Shall I start there? I just very quickly, just to pick up literally in one sentence on what you just said, which is so interesting. Wish we had time to unpick it more. But just on this issue of choice, I agree that if a woman makes a free choice, then we can disagree, but we should protect the choice. But what I'm very interested in is how can we be sure that the choices that people make are free? Obviously no choice is totally free, but how can we make sure that choices are informed? How can we make sure that women are making choices in a position of the same kind of equality that men, and hopefully move forward into a situation where women and men are liberated to make truly free choices. So I'm more interested in, rather than unpicking maybe an individual's reasons for coming to say going into sex work, but looking at the wider context in society, the pressures that are working on young women to feel this is the right way forward, you know, this is a possible way of work. And as I said, many of the sex workers I talked to were talking about it as they believed it would be sort of empowering or liberating. And one of them, I remember, said, I did make a choice, but it was a damaging choice, it was a wrong choice. I don't want other women to make a similar choice. So I think when we say the word choice, you know, I'm very interested in how that plays out. I would like to say something about the situation in the UK very quickly, because I think it is really interesting. And as you can tell, I'm very interested in kind of pragmatic solutions, how women can work together. And what's been really great for me, and one of the things I'd love to hear about if there's anything similar going on in other countries in Italy or elsewhere, is that while I was writing this book, Living Dolls, I was in a state of real depression about what was happening with feminism in the UK. I felt that there was a real gap between the generations. I felt that, and I put myself, you know, in this older generation, really, women have become a bit complacent about feminism. We sort of felt, oh, we've kind of made the arguments. We've passed equal opportunities legislation, we've got great maternity leave, ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. We can kind of sit back. And yes, if we can see all this pornography in the mainstream and so on, let's not go out and fight all those battles again. We don't want to look humorless, we don't want to look strident. You know, so there was a sort of sense of fatalism, people just sort of sitting back and being a bit complacent. But what's interesting to me is, since my book was published, and I'm certainly not claiming all the credit for that, there are other books published at the same time, real debate has been stimulated in the UK. I think politically things haven't got any better. They've got worse with our new government, but there's a real change at the grassroots. A lot more feminist activism. So some of the things similar to what you're seeing here, with women actually coming out onto the streets and protesting. There's a lot of protesting against the sex industry going on in the UK, a lot of work against Playboy, against lap dancing, stripper clubs and so on, which has stimulated a lot of really, really interesting debate and has brought loads more young women back into feminism, huge new feminist conferences, feminist organisations. So that's great, and I think it's also beginning to change conversation outside the women's movement. You know, I think it's beginning to go right into the mainstream. And what's fascinating to me is, to go back to the binaries, men are talking as well, which is really important, both about the involvement of men in parenting and the work of caring, making a home, which we haven't really talked that much about because we've been so focused on the sex industry and so on, but I think is a vital part of feminism today, about the way that men rise to these new challenges, what hopefully they'll see as exciting and positive challenges. So we've seen a bit more debate coming from men as well. And so I do feel hopeful, as I said earlier, that change is possible. We're seeing that happening, the debate happening in the grassroots, and it's a question of focusing it, pushing also for political change, and really, really widening this debate way into the mainstream and talking in quite pragmatic ways, I think, about how we can actually change our society and become more liberated.
Grazie Natasha Walter, Beatriz Preciado e poi Michela Marzano e poi diamo la parola al pubblico.
Okay. Well, no, I'm just worried about where are we located to be able to say that our choices are autonomous choices and others are not. I'm really, really worried about that, because I mean, I would say that how many people can really choose their gender they've been assigned? No one. right? The gender is being given to us when we're being born. We're basically assigned, you know, in Italy we would say a sex rather than a gender. And so that is not, we have no choice. And that choice, that not having choice, doesn't seem to worry you. The fact that we don't have any choice. Well, I would say that is the first thing that should be questioning, is this amazingly lack of choice at the beginning of our life and the way we are constituted as a subject.
That worries me. I said that I'm trying to challenge biological determinism.
No, but I'm saying it's fine.
I said I tried to challenge biological determinism, how genes and hormones. Why do you say this doesn't worry me? I've written a book about it.
Because I don't see that you're fighting with the same energy the sex-gender system that prostitution, as if prostitutes couldn't fight for themselves in a way. And for instance, I mean, if we're talking about choices and making choices, I mean, in a normative regime as our one, do we really have a choice for not being heterosexual? Do we really have a choice for not getting married? Do we have a choice for not having kids and reproducing? I mean, so I would come back, because I think that, I mean, maybe we shouldn't stick to the question of prostitution, since basically we are not sex workers, any of us, and maybe there is somebody in the audience that really want to talk about that, you know. But I think the key issue is why the women's bodies have been historically excluded outside of the production economy, and how they are being excluded. And that, if we retrace that history, we will realize why women cannot be prostitutes, right? Just because, I mean, basically, everything that has to do with women's body has to be controlled within heterosexual institutions for sexual reproduction. That is the big worry. I mean, what is the difference between working with your hands and working with your vagina? What is the political, maybe you find that there is a political, ontological, transcendental difference between the vagina and the hand. I do not find that difference, right? So I think that we need to rethink politically the body and why men have been able, I mean, let's just think together why men, and we are not even thinking about male prostitution, right? And why men, and of course, being heterosexuality the big norm, let me tell you, I mean, of course there are a lot of male prostitutes outside there working, right? Which, for those we don't seem to have any worry about, since we're basically very, very used to see men using the whole body in an autonomous, free way within public space, enjoying sexuality. So I think the question, we should tie the question of prostitution to the question of refusing the heterosexual system, refusing marriage, and doing a free use of the body, of the female body, since it's being marked that way. But I think that we should rethink this question of prostitution within the history of capitalism, and not just to think about choices and who is making what choices when, right? Because in that case, I could prevent, imagine, I mean, if you let me, instead of, let's say that we're basically, you and I, we are assigned tomorrow the head of the feminist party, right? That would be very funny. You and I, we have, there is that could happen. There is a feminist party, and you and I, we are the head of the feminist party. You would say, oh, let's avoid prostitution, and I would say, let's avoid heterosexuality. You know, I mean, who am I to decide that basically heterosexuality or heterosexual marriage is not a choice, it's not a free choice. I don't see it as a free choice, since basically it's a very normative regime. But it's still, if you want to, and I'm not saying that don't feel attacked, because one thing is the regime and the other thing is what you do, right? And you're not, I mean, as much as you try, you will never be heterosexual, right? That is it. It's just an ideal. Don't worry. So just like, you know.